After a summer like we had in 2022, it's tempting to talk once again about climate change. Can you feel it? Supposedly, our planet is only 1 degree Celsius warmer than it was in the pre industrial period. But something about the weather is already changing, and it may be just the beginning. What awaits us, and what can we do to make it all better? First, let's see some stats about the summer that has just ended. The first 6 months of 2022 were the sixth hottest on record since 1880. July 19th surpassed all-time record high in several places in the UK. In the US, 1,200 places broke daily high temperatures records this summer. Europe has set a record for wildfire destructions. Nearly 660,000 hectares have been destroyed by fires between January 1st and August 13th. The scale of the destruction this year is to be the worst since records began in 2006. Experts say that today, a typical forest fire season burns 3 million more hectares globally than 20 years ago. Heat waves were accomplished by an impressive set of natural disasters. Floods in Pakistan claimed over 1,000 lives, with the government reporting $10 billion in damage. In China, parts of the Yangtze River, the largest river in Asia, dried up. In the US, a historic 500-year flood swept across rural places of Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. Minneapolis experienced 5 tornadoes, measuring up to 85 miles per hour. The heat itself was devastating. For instance, in Portugal and Spain, over 2,000 people died from a heat wave in 2 weeks of July when it went above 40 degrees Celsius. It's difficult to count the victims of high temperatures, though. Scientists say it will take months or maybe a year to have the data on this summer season's casualties. You can use excess mortality graphs for calculations, but they don't represent an exact heat wave death toll. Some studies claim that in the US, at least 700 people die each year because of excessive heat, which is more deaths than hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, or extreme cold causes. But others show that the number of average deaths per year related to hot temperatures can exceed 20,000. The sun and the droughts also damaged our crops and food supplies significantly. Cereal yields in Europe are down about 2% overall, compared with the 5-year average. Corn yields are forecast to fall by up to 9%. In the US, June heat wave caused around 2,000 cattle deaths in Kansas only. What it means is that we'll be feeling the aftermath of this summer throughout the whole year. Food products will rise in cost, and some regions may experience famine. There's a good chance we will have another summer like this again in a few years. Earth's average temperatures has increased by 1.1 Celsius since 1880, and it goes up by around 0.15 Celsius every decade. As a result, the last 8 years have been the hottest on record. High temperatures increase the chance of heat waves and natural disasters that come along. The experts from the University of Washington say the number of days with an air temperature over 39 degrees Celsius is going to double by the 2050s. In practice, this means that the southeastern United States, for instance, will experience a month or two of dangerous heat days every year. Same goes for China. In tropics, dangerous heat will span over several months a year. Will we be able to adapt? The US is a relatively rich country, which means that most people there can at least afford air conditioning. But lots of people in tropical countries live in poverty, and they often have to work outside. By the way, this is a rather optimistic scenario where we manage to keep the warming under 2 degrees Celsius. The scale of climate change and what it brings will depend on our actions. I guess the question that you might ask is, how did we get here? What exactly happened that made global temperature higher? By now, you should have already heard about greenhouse gases and that they are somehow related to the whole issue. Greenhouse gases include methane and nitrous oxide, but what we are most concerned about is carbon dioxide. We release CO2 into the atmosphere by burning things like coal, oil, and natural gas. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere causes the greenhouse effect. Sunlight hits the Earth, but the atmosphere retains the heat and doesn't let it get back to space. The effect is stronger with larger emissions. The Industrial Revolution messed up the balance because we basically dug out all the fossil fuels and started burning them. Here is the diagram that shows the main source of greenhouse gas emissions in the world. As you can see, our energy needs are the main one. It includes transport, industry needs, plus electricity and heating for our homes and offices. Using land and forest resources also make a big impact. Of course, scientists have been warning us about it for years. The first report actually came out in 1896. Swedish scientist Svante Arrhenius was the first to suggest that changes in CO2 levels could alter the surface temperature. But it wasn't until the 80s when scientists really started to unite for action on climate change. In 1992, the United Nations got involved. First, there was the Kyoto Protocol in 1995 that binded development countries to emission reduction targets. Then, 196 parties negotiated the Paris Agreement in 2016. The world leaders agreed to try to keep the rise in temperature below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Ideally, we would want to limit the increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius, but most experts say that the change of it is close to zero. How exactly do we plan to stop the warming? The countries stray from fossil fuels and switch to renewable energy. Some already do very well. Norway and Iceland, for example, almost fully rely on hydroelectric power. Some move towards the switch rapidly. For instance, China produces more CO2 than any other country, but it also installs more green energy capacity than anyone else. The USA made a splash with its recent climate bill. In August 2022, Joe Biden signed a $370 billion act, which became the largest investment into the fight against climate change in American history. It covers the investments in nuclear power and carbon storage projects. The bill also made energy-efficient appliances and green energy generators, like solar panels, more affordable for citizens. Through this climate bill, the government hopes to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 40% and bring the U.S. back to the level that predates 2005. Compared to the ignorance that the Trump office showed to the problem, it's a great change. Now, this is the point where some people say that's totally not going to work. Green energy does more harm than good. We release more CO2 into the air by making turbines and panels that they are going to offset. What? You are going to convince me that burning biomass is okay and coal is not? And there is some truth to it. No type of green energy is completely harmless to the environment, and none of them is a perfect solution. Dams kill fish. Geothermal plants require drilling. Nuclear plants are deadly dangerous and expensive, but it's still better than the future that fossil fuels drag us towards. So, all in all, these green energy solutions are the best option that we have right now. And now, the final question. What are we to do, the ordinary people? It's commonplace to say that we should do our part, sort our garbage, plant trees, and also use renewable energy. In fact, it became a marketing strategy. Some salesmen go as far as saying that you should feel ashamed if you don't buy an electric car. But there's only so much a single person can do. One American household produces around 15 tons of CO2 per year. But as of 2020, there were over 128 million households in the US. And together, these households stand only for a fifth of all carbon dioxide generation in the US. So to be honest, the power to change the situation truly relies in the hands of politicians and executives of large corporations. What I want us to do is to keep the problem in the spotlight. Vote for those who want to solve it. Hold accountable those who want to conceal it. Because the worst thing we could do is to sweep the problem under the carpet. And hey, it's not like sorting garbage doesn't help, but it's more about us all doing the right things together, rather than just some individuals trying to save the world on their own. That's all from me for this time. If you liked the video, leave a note in the comment, subscribe, and check our socials. I'm Brian, and I'll see you next time.